Thank you, City of St. Paul, for letting us use the open forum stage. I'm Harold Owen from Eldersburg, Maryland, and I'm a software developer. And the purpose of our open forum stage spot today is to bring to you the Maryland Republican congressional candidates. And I just want to give you a couple of disclaimers first. We don't have all the candidates here today, but the idea here was to extend the offer to the Maryland Republican candidates who are running for Congress and invite them to share the mic time. I'm not affiliated with the Republican Party, although I am registered as a Republican this year. So I wanted to take just 5 minutes to explain why I've asked these gentlemen to speak with us today, because it's important to me. My first job when I was in high school and college was cutting grass. And I really enjoyed it because when you're cutting the grass, you have an opportunity to think to yourself. The sound of the lawnmower is kind of like white noise. And you can think about the events of your day, you can philosophize about things, and sort through your ideas. When I was in college, my economics professor, Professor Stuart Forbes from Hillsborough Community College, recommended many readings to me and influenced me in a lot of ways. So teachers, never forget that you can have a huge impact on your students. And students, while you may not remember all of your teachers and all of your classes, you will have some important learnings in those times. So Professor Forbes taught me about the value of free markets and the value of our American government, which I don't take for granted. And how important it is that we have rights in this country. And he gave me a very strong message that lasted throughout my life, and I owe him a lot, a debt of gratitude for that. We have a great country founded on the U.S. Constitution. But I'm not an economist and I'm not a politician, so I chose instead to live my life. I have not gone into politics in any manner. Instead, I decided to pursue a career, pursue my interests, pursue my own happiness, and eventually I met my lovely wife, Wenji, and we had 2 children, Hi, Skylar and Newland, and still have a good job, and now I have my own house with its own grass and my own lawnmower. And so nowadays I think about different things. If you've ever seen the movie that's just come out called IOUSA, it's kind of enlightening. I recommend that you see it. It talks about 4 major problems in this country right now. It doesn't provide all the solutions, but it's a very mind-opening film. And I think those ideas summarize what I think about a lot today. I think about the budget deficit, about how our government spends more than it brings in. I think about the trade deficit, about how Americans are buying more things from abroad than we're actually selling abroad. I think about the savings deficit, about how America's going into debt. Personally, we're going into debt with credit card debt, and our government's going into great debt too. And so we have very trying economic times. But equally important, this movie makes the point that the most important thing is that we have in this country a leadership deficit. And I think there's many evidences of that today. We focus a lot on the presidential candidate and about the disapproval rating of the current president. But I think equally important is that Congress also has a pretty low approval rating, and that we need to be focused just as well on the congressional candidates. But I'm very optimistic in Maryland because I've met some of the congressional candidates, and that's why I wanted to invite them here today. So I'm not going to speak for them, but I'm going to tell you that I'm optimistic in Maryland. I encourage you to also check out your congressional candidates in your state and find out what's happened in politics in your area. I'm very optimistic by the message of these guys, so I'll give them the rest of the time on the microphone. So, unfortunately, Mike Harkadon, who has agreed to speak, was not able to make it because of a flight arrangement conflict. But today we have also Collins Bailey was not able to speak. However, Mike Harkadon has offered somebody from his campaign to speak on his behalf, J Citroni, and also Richard Matthews is running for Congress in Maryland. I'm proud to introduce him to you today.
My name is Patrick Citroni. I'm from Baltimore, Maryland. Here to speak a little bit on behalf of Dr. Mike Argonaut. He apologized he couldn't make it today. Again, I'm from Baltimore, Maryland. Maryland is an extremely liberal state. Maryland is so liberal, even our crabs are blue. With the way times are going today, with the way the current administration has been handling the situation in Iraq and the aftermath of 9/11, the consequences of those events, and the current Congress, the Democratic Congress, has rubber stamped many policies that Dr. Mike and many of us feel are detrimental to our civil liberties here in America. Our country was founded on the right of the people to go and come as they please, to do as they wish, and we just see those rights being eroded continually by the leadership in this country. Being eroded on the idea that security will come with that. We don't believe that's the case. Unfortunately, in Maryland, as I said, we're a very liberal state, and Democrats have taken over. Taxes are going up, home ownership, foreclosure rates are going through the roof, gas prices are through the roof, food is through the roof, and you see this as a trend nationwide. We don't see any real solutions coming from Washington. It's time for new leadership, and it's time to get back to the roots of the Constitution: individual liberty, limited government. The government is supposed to be of the people, by the people, for the people, restrained by the people. Unfortunately, we don't see that today, and it's with guys like Dr. Mike Argonaut and Richard Matthews and Collins Bailey, who are out there spreading this message of liberty, peace, and prosperity, of economic freedom for you, that we need to get back to, and hopefully with that, we'll get back to our roots of the Constitution. We'll have our individual liberties restored, and we're just here to welcome. We're running as Republicans. We're here to welcome all people. We're Republican, Democrat, anti-war protesters, right to work folks. We're here for liberty, and that's the bottom line, and that's why we're here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Patrick. I work closely with Patrick also in my campaign. My name is Richard Matthews, running for Congress in Maryland's 2nd District. I like to explain to people I'm a regular guy. I'm not a politician running for Congress because I didn't like my congressman. I'm one of the 91% of this nation who disagrees, who disapproves of his Congress. And I take that to my own congressman, who I cannot agree with in any way. I saw that he was going to run unopposed, potentially, in this race. And I decided near the filing deadline that I could not let that stand. I disagree with his my opponent's big spending tendencies, his disrespect for our civil liberties, voting for things such as the reauthorization of the Patriot Act, voting for the recent FISA amendments in the Protect America Act, and also voting to continue our presence in Iraq. And I very much disagree with those policies, and I decided that this was my way to do something about it. I for a long time adhered to the principles of limited government, civil liberties, and peace. Quite honestly, my passionate issue is taxes. I believe we should pay less, as many people do, but I also believe fundamentally that our system of taxation in this nation, the income tax as it's currently administered, is fundamentally against the principles that this nation was founded upon. We fought a Cold War. We struggled against the Soviet Union for over 60 years. It was a giant struggle of socialism versus capitalism. And this nation's tax code, unfortunately, during that time, has gotten so convoluted, there's encouragements for this, discouragements for that, and it allows our policymakers to have incredible control and basically top-down management of our economy. We had, we were against the 5-year plan that the Soviets always talked about. But what have we become? We've become a nation whose lawmakers 1 year encourage you to buy a Hummer, and then 5 years later they encourage you to buy a Prius. I don't want any of that. I want a simple, flat plan that has no policy in it at all, because I truly believe our tax code is where our policymakers usurp the Constitution the most. So I say I'd like to get rid of our current tax code and go to a simplified plan. I don't really even care what it is. Flat tax, fair tax, no tax. I like them all. So yeah, I just want to reduce it to a single sheet. One thing I proposed, acknowledging this is a very difficult goal to achieve in a quick turnaround, one thing I've proposed is a veterans tax relief bill that I will introduce once I'm elected next year. I want all of our veterans who've served for 20 years or disabled or have received a pension and are receiving a pension from our military, I want them to go tax-free entirely. No income tax will be necessary with that pension money. And secondly, kind of a different concept to many, if that veteran only receives a pension from the military and has no other income, I don't want them to fill out any forms whatsoever. I believe it's our basic human dignity to not have to tell an authority our internal, our family's financial dealings. And if we can start down that plan with our veterans who fought for our country or were willing to fight for our country and served honorably in the military, I think we can ask them how they like it and go on from there in the future. Another subject near and dear to my heart is our war in Iraq. We may have gone in with honorable purposes. We've achieved many of the goals that we set out to achieve when we first went in there. We've toppled a dictator. We have set up a democratic system. As imperfect as it is, as imperfect as ours is, we've set up a democratic system, and we've also secured that country. And I believe it's time to leave now. The only way that the Iraqi government can really take its feet, can really take their country back for Iraq and be proud of Iraq, is if our troops are not there. Radical elements of any society will attack and be upset with a standing army from a foreign nation in their country, and I don't believe that our men and women are there with any malintent or anything like that. But it's time to come home and let Iraq stand on its own, and it's far time. We've achieved there, and it's time to come home. And to that goal, war and peace in this nation, if you look at our Constitution, is not entirely up to the executive. It falls with the Congress, and we need to remember that. The power to declare war in this nation, it rests with the Congress. We have not declared war in this nation properly since World War II, and I believe we need to get back to that. So it also rests with the Congress if our troops are being used in an unauthorized manner, as they are right now. And it's up to the Congress to rein that back in. No, I don't want to starve the troops out in the field, and that will not happen. But if you use funding bills in Congress, you can properly, responsibly, safely, and swiftly bring the troops home. And I think we need to do that in 2009. My Democratic opponent will not commit to do this. He's voted for every Iraq War funding bill, and we need to hold him accountable for that. Another issue that Patrick touched on earlier that is very important is our civil liberties. After 9/11, our civil liberties have been eroded. There was the Patriot Act passed, and in the furor around those times that were frightening to us all, I don't want to say it's excusable, but it's understandable why the Patriot Act was first passed. But what is inexcusable after we stepped back, after we picked ourselves up, dusted ourselves off after 9/11, was to pass the reauthorization of that act after we knew how terrible it was. My Democratic opponent, Dutch Ruppersberger, passed the reauthorization of the Patriot Act, and I want to hold him accountable for that. He also passed the FISA amendments bill this year, and we need to hold him accountable for that. That bill will enable telecom companies who have basically illegally broken their contracts with you and me to keep our information private. They broke those contracts, and they assisted the federal government without warrants to spy on everyday Americans. And those FISA amendments are going to allow those companies to get away scot-free, and we will not be able to sue those companies for those actions. And I believe it's fundamentally against contract law. It's fundamentally against our privacy. And again, my Democratic opponent voted for that. And I think the electorate needs to be informed of these things. They need to be shouted from the rooftops, and that's what I intend my campaign to do. So from wherever you are here in St. Paul, I encourage you to look at the candidate. Look at the candidates who are running. If you do not like the candidates who are running, run yourself. This is our country. We can take it back. And thank you very much. And also, I want to thank Harold Owen especially for setting up this time, encouraging us to get out here. Thank you very much, Harold.
Excel Center.